You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 207, Creating a Functional Workspace That Lights You Up with Viola. If you're a business owner who wants to improve your time management and elevate your productivity so you can maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. So I'd like to share with you a couple things before we jump into meeting our guest today. One is that if you haven't already listened to episode 206, Seasons, I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode where I share with you some of the changes that are happening over the next several months here on Productivity Straight Talk. So I have an announcement, but of course, it's absolutely wrapped in some great business lessons. And then second, I want to make sure that you are aware of my Leverage Lab experience. Leverage Lab is my coaching, training, and accountability program. Now, I have been talking to several of you offline, and I've been hearing similar messages and themes. And that is, I have been looking at it, I have been checking it out, but I don't think I'm quite ready yet. I don't know if this is the right time to get started inside Leverage Lab. And here is my message for you. If not now, when? Now, I mean that in the truest sense, meaning that is not a sales pitch. But if you can truly answer, if not now, when, you are setting a date of commitment and something to work towards. And to answer, if not now, when, you have to stop being so general and generalizing, I'm just not ready. I want you to determine what is it that is getting in the way between you accepting coaching, training, support, accountability to take you and your business to the next level. Tell me what could be more important than prioritizing making the time to say yes to yourself and your business. Now, if there is a real reason at the end of the day, I get it. But give yourself a timeline or a deadline or a date that you are going to say yes to Leverage Lab. Now, I'm saying this because I know that so many of you have been longtime loyal listeners of Productivity Straight Talk and that you are getting tons of value from the podcast. And I want that for you. But just imagine what kind of value you can get by joining us inside Leverage Lab. When I'm asking you to come up with a very clear plan, it's because that has everything to do with everything that I'm teaching here on the podcast about creating goals and an action plan and taking action and showing up for yourself and saying yes and prioritizing working on your business, not just in your business. And one of the best ways to do that is to exercise this through right here, right now about Leverage Lab. Because I'm all about efficiency and because I've had a similar conversation with so many of you offline, I thought, well, that would be really efficient if I had this conversation with you here on the podcast. So pardon me if that is not what you're thinking and you're like, well, what's Leverage Lab? I want in. If now is the time for you, then I would love to have you join us. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. Again, that is amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. I am so excited and looking forward to introducing you to our guest and my client, Viola. Maria and I have worked together for about a year in my private coaching program. And she reached out to me about this potential topic to bring to you, the listeners of Productivity Straight Talk. And as you'll hear, I had this topic already on my radar. And when she made the ask, it was a perfect and resounding yes. I knew that she would be able to bring value and experience and perspective and have a great conversation around designing a functional workspace for you. Before we dive into my conversation with Maria, I want to properly introduce her. Established in 2005, Viola Interior Design LLC is an award-winning interiors firm on Philadelphia's prestigious Main Line and has been designing distinctive homes for years. Principal Maria Viola, allied ASID, believes in helping clients understand the importance of a warm, inviting spaces that look beautiful and function well. This is done for each client's particular needs and style. Maria received her master's degree in interior architecture and design from Drexel University and is taught extensively at Antoinette Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University. Maria and her team have the ability to combine modern and traditional, balancing scale and proportion, always with a twist that raises it above ordinary. With humor, knowledge, she partners with clients to affect change in their lives. And now, let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk, Maria. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm excited to speak with you, Amber.
I am excited as well. And I told you in our pre-chat that I had this topic on my list of ideas for the podcast. And when you and your team reached out, first of all, because you're a past client, and second of all, I was like, this is such a great topic. I could not wait to really bring this to the listeners of Productivity Straight Talk.
Well, what they can't see is I'm smiling ear to ear because I'm excited that we're going to cover this topic. I think it's so important.
I do too. And, when we did our pre-chat, the listeners need to know, I generally always do a pre-chat just so we can get an overarching idea of what the episode's going to be about so we can bring the best interview and content to you. And in the pre-chat, Maria, I was sharing with you, I feel like this is incredibly important, but it's not my area of expertise. So when you reached out, I was like, this is great because I have questions and I have my own experiences and then you have your expertise. So I think this will be a great topic. Maria, before we dive into how design in our space affects our productivity, I would love to hear about you as a business owner. Talk to us about your business, maybe your team. How long have you been an interior designer?
So Viola Interior Design is a luxury residential design firm. We do interiors primarily residential, as I mentioned, but we have done some commercial offices and actually restaurant design as well. We are located in the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, although we do projects wherever we are needed. And we like to make sure we focus on the client's particular needs and aesthetic. In other words, we don't have a blanket style that we enforce. We like to really get to know our clients, their personality, their likes and dislikes, and that is a springboard for us to do amazing designs for them.
Excellent. And what does your team look like?
So I currently have, I say 2.5 people because we do have an intern who is currently in school for interior design, but she's been wonderful. She comes here when she has days that are available and she assists our team. But full-time, we have our administrator, Kelly, who she really helps us run an efficient operating machine, I like to say, because it's very important, as you know, as a productivity specialist, that our office works in a productive, timely manner, not only for ourselves, but for our clients. And then I also have a full-time designer, Lauren, who assists me on all design projects, and she runs some of the projects herself, but primarily it is the both of us or just myself running a project. So we really have such a hybrid of the way we work in this office, and it works great for us. And we pride ourselves in, we have a lot of fun here, but we work very, very hard.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that one thing that if you are not familiar with the interior design industry is realizing how many moving parts there are.
Oh,
Like we as the consumer, I'm going to say we because like I love the design. I'm just not a designer. So we get to see the finished, amazing, beautiful images and all of that. But, working with interior designers and getting behind the scenes, and I am a details person, and I'm even taken back at just how many moving parts, operation, details, communication happens in an interior design company or firm. So I love that you have a team supporting you. All right, let's dive into talking about, well, why are we talking about our space? Like, let's just springboard off of that to use your own words. Why does our space matter to our productivity?
Well, you want to show up every day feeling confident and inspired. I mean, I feel like I can make that statement, and just about everybody listening will agree with that. I don't think there's anybody out there that's going to be like, nah, I'd like to just show up and kind of have half an energy bar level of work. You want to bound into your office, feel ready for the day, feel braced for what you don't even know is coming your way. And the only way you're going to do that is if you are responding positively to your surroundings. And I always say that should not be trivialized. What your immediate surroundings are in the space you are spending the most time should really be in tune with not only how you work, but how you like to feel mentally. So
Yes.
is your space supporting that?
All right. So one of the frameworks I use is that your thoughts create your feelings and your feelings create your actions. So if we have thoughts about our space, like it's overwhelming, it's cluttered, it's unprofessional, it's depressing, like those are actual thoughts people have, either like consciously, like they're really knowing that they're saying it, or they are subconsciously thinking those thoughts. Those feelings that follow will create action or inaction, right? Like when you're talking about showing up with energy and, positivity and maybe even feeling light, what do those feelings inspire with action? And I can say it's productivity all the way, right?
Absolutely it is. And even if you are on a phone call with someone or a Zoom call with someone, your attitude is going to come forth in your voice, in your smile, if people can see you, and what you have behind you. If we're talking about visuals, because Zoom has become so important in all of our lives, or Google Teams, or whatever product you're using. And we are hearing requests quite often for people to really make whatever is behind them look much better. So it might be that someone has a designated home office that we're going to completely redo. It might be that they might not have a designated space in their home, but they know where they typically go to do their Zoom calls, and they want to address that space. And then there are people that have outside offices, and they have to really think about, okay, they're walking into an empty box that they've leased, and what can they do to that empty box so that it does not feel hollow, temporary, void of any personality? Because you don't want to go to either extreme. You don't want to look like you're in a big, cluttered, eccentric mess of a space, but you also don't want to look like you're, there was nothing on the walls, the light is horrible, but whatever, I'm just going to do my work here.
Right. And when you're talking about even offices, like you're speaking about where you potentially have clients coming in to visit you, whether we want to admit it or not, you are giving an impression. Are you professional? Yes. Are you fly by the seat of your pants? Or like you said, temporary? That experience is setting the tone for your experience with your client. And if
It
I was
is.
going to show up, say, to my accountant's office, and I showed up and it looked like they were on boxes and temporary and this and that, I wouldn't really trust to give my financials to the accountant where their space doesn't represent professionalism.
That is so true, because I can tell you firsthand that I have met with people. I can remember distinctively, I was several years back, I was meeting with a woman that owned a showroom, and I was looking at some important pieces for a client's home. And I was meeting with the owner of the showroom directly. And she walked me over to her space that she operated out of in the showroom. And it was a cluttered mess. And she was taking notes, and she just grabbed whatever piece of paper she could find and was scribbling all over it. And I noticed there were tons of previous notes on that piece of paper already. So you can imagine my level of confidence was not high for what I was going to be getting from her. And I was thinking to myself, is she going to really mess up this order? Is she going to get this right? And I can tell you that there were issues down the line. Mm-hmm. And that is not a good feeling. And I was thinking to myself, this cannot be a good feeling for her either, to feel scattered. And it's not that I'm trying to be judgmental. It's that all you have to do is devote a day to really getting your space to a certain point that you feel is best for you and whoever might be meeting with you.
Right, right. I think that that's important. We don't know what other people are thinking, but we can both agree, you and I here on this conversation, that when I see someone's desk completely a mess, or that experience that you just described, I think the same thing. It's not giving me confidence to want to give them the work, or that they're going to follow through, or that they're professional. And here's the catch. They could be. Like, their space just doesn't represent who they are. And maybe that's a great segue into, let's create spaces that really represent who we are and who we want to be to our clients, so that we show up as that person every single day. I'm going to share a couple things about my space that I shared with Maria when I was saying, I really think this is important. My home office is got light gray walls. It's got modern furniture, white furniture. I really like a clean environment. And for me, I walk in my office and literally smile to myself every day. And I think that's so important. Like, it sets the tone. And then I walk over and I light my candle and I sit at my desk, and it's got all my favorite colors around me. And for me, it's perfect. For someone else, it might not be. But for me, it gets me in my zone of like, it's go mode. And I love this space. And so I've always prioritized creating a space that really lit me up. And I know just in experience of past clients that have decided they're going to declare to create a space that is cluttered, decluttered and professional. And it really does change how we show up. So, Maria, what are some things that we should consider when we're considering creating a space that works best for our productivity or the way that we work?
So, job one is you need to step back and say to yourself, okay, how do I work best? Am I someone who really just needs my laptop and I'm good to go? Well, okay, then how do you create a filing system on that laptop? And I'm going to guess that while you may focus primarily on your laptop, you're going to look around your office from time to time. What do you want to see in that office? Mm-hmm. Do you want to see pieces of art that inspire you? Do you want to see quotes of things that every time you read that quote, you remember why you started your business? So that's one thing. The other thing is, there are many people that it isn't just about a laptop for them. They still have files. I still have files. I have literal files that are filled with paperwork. Why? That is just the way I like to work. Yes, of course, I have many files on my computer, but I like having a system where my desk is organized. To shed some light on how I work and what works for me is I have a long desk in front of me, and then I have a side desk that it's not an old-fashioned, typical office L-shaped desk. It's something that I kind of curated myself. However, that structure works for me because the way I use my desk, sometimes I'm drawing plans or I'm editing floor plans. Sometimes I'm using my laptop off to the left of that desk to look up images, to write emails. And then other times I am looking through files that are in a filing drawer right next to my desk where I can pull things that refer back to maybe handwritten notes I took in a meeting. So, like I said, job one is to take a moment and really analyze how you work every day and set the things up that you go to the most, have them at the ready. Sometimes I'll go into people's offices and the things they rely on the most are across the room from them. And I'll say to them, well, okay, let's take a minute here and think about that. Is there a way we can get these right next to you? And I know that sounds so basic, but it's things that may not occur to people right away. Because
I can testify that I have been in clients' offices way back when I used to do on sites, and I'd say that, like, I'd see them and I'm like, well, how many times are you getting up a day for that? And they're like, I don't know. I've never thought about it. And so think about that time waste of like getting up and going to the printer. If you're printing multiple times a day, the printer needs to be hands like reach away, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
And even your phone, there's people that, because if you're in an external office like we are, we use our office phones, our landlines a lot, because if we're just going to get a more professional sound from a landline, and our building is structured in a way that we do not get great cell reception. So my office landline phone system is right next to me because I do use it a lot. Now, again, there's other people that'll say to me, we rarely use our landline. I don't need that sitting on my desk. It's taking up space. Well, okay, then we're going to get that off your desk. And again, there's something I want to touch on that's so important, Amber, that people, I think, discount because, again, it might sound trivial, but even the color of your walls. And if you are leasing an office space, you can ask the landlord, you can give them a color to paint your walls. You do not have to do art museum white on your walls. If that is not something you respond to, then say to the landlord or the property owner, I would like you to allow us to have this paint color on our wall. It's better to arrange that before you move into that office space because number one, they'll do it for you. And number two, you want to get those kinds of things out on the table immediately. Are they going to let you do a dark, saturated color that's going to be impossible for them to paint over? Probably not. But certainly there's a whole spectrum of colors that don't fall into that category. It's going to lift your spirits. You're looking at it every day. You're spending a large majority of your day in your office, whether it's your home office or an external office. And you also have to think about what is right for the people coming into your office, which we touched on in our pre-chat, because I said to you, if you're in a home office, do you have a place for people to sit? It could be just family members. It could be that you never have someone from the outside coming in. But again, I guarantee a friend, a family member, someone is going to stop in to speak to you. Do you have a place for them to sit? Or are you like, oh, there's a pile of record keeping boxes over there. Just, prop yourself up on that for a half hour while we chat.
Right.
So, that's a consideration as well.
I wanted to speak to, so I agree with the couch. I have a couch. It's my favorite teal color that's in my office. I'm pretty sure the best part of me would say I did it so that my husband and son could sit on it, but I really saw it and I was like, I have to have that couch.
That's okay.
And now it's perfect because when it's open door, so just like if I worked at a regular professional outside office, external office, when my door's open, they are welcome to come in, right? And they sit down and they'll chit chat with me, or they have a space. But I actually wanted to rewind to painting of the walls.
Yes.
I love color too. And I can tell you that everywhere I've ever gone, either professional office, rented an office, even when I was a renter 15 years ago, I've painted because I'm like, I'll paint before I go leave. Like I know what the color is. So I find out what the color is. I will paint and know that I'm going to lose my deposit if I don't paint it back. So I paint it back and no one knows generally. And there was one time that they were like, well, we need to repaint the walls because of all the scuffs from the last tenant. And I said, great. How about this mindful gray? Like I literally said, like, here's the color, right? So I just wanted to say, yes, you can have them do it. Or if you're comfortable, as long as you know you're going to be painting it back, or maybe it's just an accent wall, I say go for it because color really does do a lot. I wanted to ask you, Maria, are there certain colors that make us feel a certain way? Like, and like more inspired or more creative or more focused? And I don't know the answer to this, so you may tell me no, but what do you have for us?
So I have a funny answer because it's really so much of that depends on each individual's personality. From all my years of working in this business, I will ask clients, I'll say to them, I have a question for you. This is when I first meet with them in person in their home or in their office or wherever, whatever space we're designing. I'll say to them, are there any colors that you really dislike? Because people can name, there's many colors people like. I want to know what you don't like, because usually people have a very visceral reaction to one or two colors, and they can name those right off the bat to me. Whereas
red
if I say,
and purple.
there you go. There you go.
You said it. Red
so
and
we
purple.
are not putting any red or purple in your surroundings. See how fast you were able to do that? Where if I said, what colors do you like? You probably would have been like, well, I tend to like, you would have meandered a little bit.
Right.
So the easiest thing to immediately do is at least rule out colors and tones of those colors that you do not like, and get them out of your space and out of your immediate line of sight, if that's possible. And again, I'll in your home, of course, you have total control. If you are leasing or renting an external space, you have a little bit less control. However, it is proper procedure in commercial spaces that they do try to put neutrals into those spaces. So like if there is carpeting down, they are going to try to pick neutrals. They're not going to do something crazy where you would walk in, Amber, to a rented space and it would have, purple carpet on the floor.
Right.
You control what you can. Now, for colors that people respond to, some of it tends to work in trends. Right now, we are seeing and have been seeing for the past 5 years, trends in paler tones and cooler tones. Whereas, 15 years ago, what I was seeing was everybody wanted some version of a warm beige or goldish beige. And now no one wants that. What I do try to remind everyone that we work with is that the walls, try to keep them compatible with things that you're going to be adding into the space. So while you may love a really dynamic color, I'll often remind clients, save that for some of the accent pieces in the space or the artwork in the space, rather than blanketing your walls in something that's very dynamic. Because number one, it just is going to make your life easier for when you're adding into the space, but also you don't want anything that's distracting. You sort of want the color on your walls to be soothing, but also recede. So for me, I tend to like my wall color is something called Rhinestone from Sherwin-Williams, and it's a really soft bluish gray. My neighbor, who also happens to be a designer and we're friends, he has agreeable gray on his walls. So, I mean, and then I just met a new tenant in our building, and she had her walls painted much more saturated blue. So nothing, though, no one's offices should be a vibrant electric color, because that will eventually be distracting to you, and it is not a good feeling.
Right.
So I would say stay away from electric greens, electric yellows. Try to stay on the softer side of the colors that inspire you.
All right. So just in case our listeners are, and I had a big smile. So my office is Mindful Gray from Sherwin-Williams. And I did a project. I was just on vacation where I stayed home for a week and did projects around the house. And so I repainted my pantry and my closet underneath my stairs. And I was like, I think I want to go to agreeable gray. So I painted those two areas agreeable gray. And then when I was completely done, where it looked great, my husband and I were like, nope, it's Mindful Gray. So we're going with Mindful Gray throughout the whole house, because we both love my office being
there
Mindful
you go.
Gray. And, it's just crazy. If you put them next to each other, they're so similar, but they make such a difference when you have it on like all the walls or like a big space.
That's right.
And so we have Mindful Gray. And so everything you were saying, so for me, the walls are Mindful Gray. I also wanted to speak about this. So we have tile on the whole bottom floor of our house, which is where my office is. The office had tile. Well, I'm a podcaster, and that did not work. So I bought these tiles that stick, carpet tiles that were gray. And it's actually the same as like you would see in an office, that really low pile that you can roll your chair over. And I just stuck them over the tile so that I was getting sound that sounds really good when I am recording, because I do a lot of video and podcasting. And so I went with another gray. And so if you were to take everything out of my office, it's gray on gray. And then I did what you said. I feel like, oh my gosh, maybe I did know a little bit, and did these big pops of like a couch. When that goes out of style, I can remove the couch or the artwork, but it's kind of like a clean canvas to lay over all my favorite colors that can come in and out.
That's right. And you touched on sound. And so I'll expand on that and expound on that, because sound attenuation is a big deal. There has been a trend in restaurant design for years where they've been very stripped down. And the problem with that is it looks great and it's super cleanable. But the problem with that is when the restaurant is full and everybody's chatting, plates are being put down, silverware is hitting the ceramic, you're clinking your glass. It is just a cacophony of sound, and you can barely hear the person that's only sitting 24 inches across the table from you, or 36 inches, whatever the size of the table is. And that has become a real problem in that industry. So what I always recommend to people for their offices is make sure there's something in there that's absorbing the sound, whether it's an area rug, wall-to-wall carpeting. If neither of those are your thing, then you probably want to have an upholstered piece of furniture. And even things like toss pillows, all of those absorb sound. And when you are on calls, it makes a difference. Not only, there's the audio aspect of that, but there's also the visual aspect of that, of just looking like a more comfortable space, and not just, some box that you're temporarily holed up in. And, I noticed behind you, you have some plants. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that can be really soothing and inspiring to people. First of all, we all know that plants, clean the air.
Not mine. They're fake. I can't keep any
Oh.
alive. So I value the visual appeal of a plant, but you would not feel inspired after it lived with me for 2 weeks. I kill all plants. But
So that is a great segue to what I was going to say, because I am someone that could not have a plant in her office. And I know there are people that have plants in their offices and they look great. I, like you, Amber, would have a dead plant in the corner of my office. And I'm sorry, but if I were to put a plant in my office, two things would happen to me. I would stare at it every day and think, oh my God, I got to water that plant. I got to water that plant.
Right.
So that would create stress. And then of course the plant would eventually die. And then that would stress me out even more. And no one likes to look at a dead plant. Let's face it. That is not inspiring.
Not at all.
So I say that with the caveat that if you are a plant person and you tend to them, do it, because it's going to bring you satisfaction in your working space. If you're like Amber or myself, don't do it, because that's not going to work out well. Mm-hmm. I have art on my wall that includes nature, and that's enough for me. Because
there you go. There you
it's
go.
not going to die.
Yeah, I love that we're giving options, right? Like, really, I think that if we had a theme here, it's how can you bring either the colors, the objects, the art, plants that inspire you, and overall look professional, right?
Right. And
not
your
everyone
space has to function. It has to function and it has to look great.
All right. Functionality. All right. So let's talk about functionality a little bit. I've talked about this in some of previous episodes, but I think it needs to be talked about here under this topic. So in my office, I spend a lot of time at my desk. And so I have a chair that was beautiful and it was perfectly gray and it matched and it was so uncomfortable. And so I joke that it's now like an old lady grandma chair. I have a backrest on here. I have a gel foam 3-inch like seat cushion. It looks like I just had surgery or something. But from the back, when you can't see all that, it looks really nice in the office. But for me, I did go with looks nice. And then this is like my third chair in here. And then finally I was like, I think I need to get some things that make it really functional because I'm sitting so much at my desk.
Yeah. And
then I also have a yoga ball that I bounce on and sit on. Oh. And I also have a treadmill that I walk on in meetings. So if I'm on a meeting with a team member or a meeting where I'm being passive, I'm not the one running the meeting, I have a treadmill that I pull out that goes under my desk and I'll do my steps and I'll walk. And then my desk also is an IKEA desk with a push button, can go up and can go down. So I'm literally looking to change my position to keep energy up, to keep my body moving. So for me, that's essential for functionality because it's a non-negotiable. I'm a virtual business. I am on my computer almost all the hours that I'm working in a week.
Wow. So that you packed a lot in there. So that is pretty amazing that you've given yourself so many options for how you move through the space throughout a day. So I want your listeners to think about that. Would they benefit from a chair that is much more in keeping with sitting all day? And to take that a step further, maybe you have to, not you, but some of your listeners who, sit in a chair all day. My advice would be go to a chair that is specially made for that, because the cheap chairs you get online are not going to do that for you. There are a whole series of chairs that are made especially for people that are sitting all day. And we're fortunate in our area to have, there is literally a store, a physical brick and mortar store that sells chairs for people with back issues. It could be a desk chair. It could be a lounge chair. If you have enough back issues, I highly recommend tackling that first. The other thing is, you may need to, if you can't physically get to a store to try out desk chairs, well, then it might just be a process of elimination. But don't force yourself if you're someone who sits at a desk all day, to sit in a chair that is excruciatingly uncomfortable, because what is that going to do for productivity and focus and confidence? Nothing.
Right.
The other thing is the fact that your desk raises and lowers. I do have a couple of clients that also have that and like that very much. And they really take advantage of that throughout the day. There's times they just want to be standing while they're talking or while they're meeting, and that works for them. The other thing is that I have to remind people when I'm talking to them about their workspaces is, we touched on this a little bit before, but I'm going to say it again. It's funny, a client of mine, we were talking about his new office space, and he was talking about setting up a couple of lounge chairs across the desk for him. And I said to him, okay, is that how you meet with people? Like, do they come in here and they sit and you run your meetings where they're in a lounge chair and you're at your desk? And he said, no. I said, well, how do you run your meetings? And he said, we usually sit at a table together. I said, well, then that's what we're going to do. You're not going to have a lounge chair in here.
Right.
You're going to have what works for how you run your meetings. And that was including a small round table with chairs around it. So, and those chairs, we had to be mindful that they were comfortable as well, because if he's having a 2-hour meeting with someone, your guest or your coworker or your colleague can't be squirming in their chair either. And I know these are a lot. We're giving the listeners a lot to think about. And if you can't tackle all of this at once, do it in stages and create an office aesthetic vision board for yourself. We do that for our goals. Well, hey, do it for the design of your office and the functionality of your office.
Yes.
Pull images of things that you think are going to work for you. And if you can't tackle it all at once, implement them in stages. And certainly, if you are able to hire an interior designer, do it, because they do this all day, every day. They know what they're doing and they can help you get there.
Yeah. And hiring a designer is that VIP experience. Like, we're giving you these things to think about. We can't give you all of it, right? Like, you really need someone that can sit down and say, in all my experience, here's everything we need to consider to curate and create the space for you. And so that experience is honestly a time saver. How much time are you going to spend trying to ask these questions, answer these questions, research the product? So if you have the time and you love doing that, go for it. But if you think like, okay, I want to be up and going and I want a space that is perfectly created for me, I really highly recommend hiring a designer for sure. It reminded me of an episode that I did with the owner. His name is Will, but he owns the company called Focus at Will, which is it's an online music company that creates music that allows different brain types to focus. And one of the research stats that he had shared with us was that when we are hurting or achy or uncomfortable, we are unable to focus. And so even if one of you take from this episode of just observing over the next week, are you moving and squirming and thinking of your hips and your back and your knees and your whatever that is, like that, I would say, even above the visual, like go get a new chair or a stand-up desk, like, because that will really immediately change your ability to focus. If we have this like silent recorder saying, I'm hurting, I'm uncomfortable, like, let me move. How are you able to give all of your attention to the person in front of you or the work in front of you, whether that is your client or you're privately working? You're not going to want to sit any longer.
That is so true. And I want everyone to think about all of this, not only from a productivity angle and from a functionality angle, but a self-care angle. It breaks my heart when I hear people saying, yeah, I went to look at a couple offices and I just took this one and the view outside is so depressing. I hate it. But, and I think, oh no, you shouldn't, unless it was really your only choice, you have to think of those things. You have to say to yourself, you know what, looking out at, whatever it is that the view was out that window is really going to bother me. every day and I'm going to look out there and then my mind is going to start to go into other places. Don't do it. It's not worth it. And if you're someone that needs natural light, then you need to be in a space that has natural light. And I will tell you, years ago when I should say this was even before I started my own firm, and I was working for another firm that primarily that firm focused on office spaces, bank design, and more of a public commercial implementation of design. And when we were interviewing people that worked in a certain company that we were completely redoing their headquarters, every single person I asked, because one of my tasks was to go around and ask a lot of questions, which designers do, and obtain information about how each person likes to work and what their ideal setting would be. And every single person said, I would love to be near a window, or I would love to have natural light. It was astounding to me and I'm talking about 250 people answering that question the same way. So if you can have a window in your space, it's so important. And I have spoken to designers that I have hired to work in my office, and they're always so thrilled that our office has a lot of natural light. And they'll explain to me, I worked for someone else who there was no windows in the office. And I think, first of all, is that legal? Second of all, a designer of all professions needs natural light when we're selecting things for clients. So that's stunning to me. So, I want people to I'll just come full circle with that statement. I really want people to think about it also as self-care and their emotional well-being that affects functionality and productivity.
100%. I'm so glad you brought up lighting. So I have 2 spare rooms in my house. One's my office, one's a guest room. And there was a time where we were entertaining kind of flipping them, because my office has its own hallway and bathroom. It's really like a mother-in-law suite, right?
Oh.
And so we were thinking, well, do I need all that? Maybe I'll switch it. And the one, we didn't even get further than that. And I said, no, the lighting's not as good up there. It was a done deal. This is my domain. And so I literally sit in the dark every day. So I have a huge overhead light, but I don't like it. It's I don't know the proper names. It's an LCD light.
LED.
LED, sorry. LED light. But I just don't love it. So where I've positioned my desk is so that I get natural light coming in. And so when I'm on video, I look like I'm in a lit up room. But if you were sitting with me, I am in the dark.
Wow. Yeah, because you look very well lit.
Yeah, I stay in the dark, meaning there's no lights on in my office. And if I'm working late, I'm literally still sitting in the dark. I'll let it go dark and I'm like, I should probably get up and turn a light on. But that's just not the way I like to work. I don't like to work with the fake light. So for me, the lighting is super, super important. And I'll tell you why that is also how I know it to be so true. It's because where my house is located and where my office is located in the house, the lighting is different in the winter than it is the summer. And in the winter, I'm like, I don't get as much direct sunlight because of where the sun's going over our house. And I can immediately feel the difference in my office as the seasons are changing just because of light that shows up in my office.
Absolutely. And light is not only different during different seasons, it's different, of course, during the day, but it's also different according to the area of the country you live in. So that color that you love, agreeable gray, that may not look the same. Well, I can tell you it is not going to look the same on the East Coast as it's going to look on the West Coast or the Midwest. That is the way color is. And please, by all means, everyone, test out a swatch of color, hold it vertically, never hold paint colors horizontally. That's not how you see them. And put them in a space and let yourself observe them throughout the different times of the day, and then lock into that color. Because, sometimes neutrals are funny. They may look one way at 10 a.m. and then a very, very different way at 4 p.m. And you want to like it no matter what light it's in, because you're looking at it all day long.
That's right. That's right.
And I think it's also important for everyone to know that if you are someone who still is going to be locked into video calls for a while, of course you're going to think about what's behind you, because you're the person or people you're speaking to are going to see that. But I also want you to think about that is not something you are probably looking at every day, right? So it's something that the people that are working with you are looking at every day. So think about what impression you want to give with whatever is behind you. I have some people that say to me, well, I really like the idea of being in front of a shelf of books because it relates to my profession. Or some people might say, I really want an incredible piece of artwork behind me because that has to do with whatever line of work they're in or whatever. So I want people to think about that as well. Whatever is behind your head, you're probably not looking at all day long. So how does that communicate to the people that are looking at it, that are coming in to visit you or are on a video call with you?
Okay. We were talking also about the idea that we know this, but we don't consciously maybe think about it, is that we are in our offices more than probably any other space in our life. Like if you subtract sleep, our bed, and then all of our waking hours, if you're working a 40-hour week, you're there probably more than any other space in your entire home or just in general. And so when you put it into that perspective, like this matters. Like even if you get one room, like the rest of my house, by the way, I'm like so close to remodeling, but I started here. Like this was the place, like I knew that I'm here the most. And this is the launching off point of we ended up with the gray color. Like I knew that I wanted to get this space that I'm in the very most exactly how I wanted it until the rest of the house could follow, because we've been in our house for 13 years and we are the brown, gold, beige, and I want it totally gray and white. So as you were saying that, like my house needs a full on update to what is current and also what I love. And when we bought our home brand new, I loved it. I thought, oh my gosh, it's so amazing. It all matches and it's brown and it's this and that. And now I'm like, oh, please get rid of the brown. And I'll say this too. I'm going to do a shout out. I'll leave her name nameless, but she will hear this podcast. As I had a client and I got on with her and she goes, yeah, I actually was so inspired by your color. My office had the dark wood paneling and I painted it the light gray. And I was like, if you asked, I would have given you the gray color. Like I would have told you exactly what gray it was. And she goes, it feels so much lighter, so much better. And for her, that was a step on her journey to productivity and creating space and loving her business. And it was as simple as saying, yep, this, I'm looking around, this doesn't feel good, and I'm going to paint it.
I love it. Yeah. I love that. That's so true.
I had one other story that I wanted to share too. I didn't get to share. So we were talking about putting like seating in our offices, right? So seating with boundaries works, right? And you guys heard me say closed door, family doesn't come in, open door, they can come in and visit. And so this actually came up for a client this week and he had extra seating in his office. And he's like, man, my employees come in and they just start talking and then they sit down and they get comfortable. And they don't have their meetings there. They have a conference room where their official meetings happen. And so my prescription was get rid of the chairs. Done. So for him, it was the opposite to help productivity. It was like, well, you actually don't need those. You don't want, if someone needs to come in and talk to you, you want it to be casual, stand up, ask the question and leave. Because what he was saying was, they're like getting comfortable and they'll pull up a seat. And then he's like, and then it's awkward. And how do you say, please leave?
Oh my God, that's great. One other thing that we sort of, you threw out there at the beginning of the conversation, but I want to mention it. You said you light a candle when you come into your office. Well, I think that's terrific. Now, your candle might be scented or it might just be for effect. Some people just like the flickering glow of a candle. Now, of course, you have to, there's safety considerations for that, of course. And in a commercial site that you're renting or leasing, you have to be aware of that. But I will say, smell can be as important as sound and physical comfort for some people. Smells can really affect people. So we have in our office, I have this beautiful room spray that I purchased that it's completely organic. It's very natural. And whenever I spray it, everybody comments on it. Oh, there's something about that smell that makes me feel so happy. And so it is something that you can also consider.
I love that you wrapped that up like that. That's awesome. I will, like plants, forget to spray. So I like a diffuser too. You can put oil in a diffuser. They'll run for like 8 hours. And what's interesting is, just like perfume, I don't smell it anymore, but I know it's there. And when someone else comes into the space, they smell that fresh, clean smell. So yeah, diffusers, candles, room sprays. Before I found out about diffusers, I used to use one of the candle warmers when I was in commercial spaces because you can't have fire. But that's also dangerous because when you kind of spill it, it's a mess everywhere. So I actually do not recommend the candle warmer because I've had accidents with that myself. But yes. Okay. So today let's wrap this up. We talked about color and sound and lighting and smell and inspirational pieces, whether it's art or quotes. We talked about functionality. I think we really nailed this conversation. Thank you so much, Maria. So let's close this up by sharing a little bit about how they can find you. So Maria, if they want to work with a designer and they want to reach out to you, how do they find out more about you and connect with you?
Well, there's two ways that would work. They can go onto my website, which is www.violainteriordesign.com, or they can find me on Instagram and follow me on Instagram, which is a great way to see what we're doing in the moment and kind of get to know our personality. And that's at Viola Interior Design. It's easy. So that's my handle, at Viola Interior Design. Viola is how you spell Viola.
Excellent. Thank you so much for bringing this conversation to Productivity Straight Talk, Maria.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. And hopefully everybody is inspired.
Yes, to literally when we're done with this recording, I want you to put it on the calendar to create some time and space on your calendar to create the space that inspires you.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
So as you can tell from the interview, I kind of geeked out about the topic. I am realizing I'm a little bit passionate about what our space can truly do for us and how much our space impacts our mindset and our productivity. So if something hit home for you today or inspired you to take action to create an environment that supports your productivity, enables you to focus, and just feels amazing when you step into it, then I cannot wait to hear about it. You can tell me about it and share with me some of your ahas from today's episode by following me and DMing me on Instagram. And you can do that by going to Instagram and searching Amber_De La Garza. I will personally respond to the DM because I want to hear from you, the listeners of Productivity Straight Talk. I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk, and I sure hope you have found it to be incredibly insightful and valuable. And I want to let you know that if you enjoyed today's episode and you got some ahas, then you will absolutely love joining us inside Leverage Lab. To check out Leverage Lab, learn more, and join us, you can head on over to amberdelagarza.com/Leverage Lab. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.